Obsessions can be wonderful in the right hands. Today we're visiting a portion of the largest contemporary art collections in northern New England, thanks to fascinating collector Mark Waskow. Hi, I'm Fran Stoddard, here with Mark Waskow, who's been a collector since he was a kid. The fascination and focus on contemporary art didn't start until he was in Vermont in the 90s. And since that time, he has amassed over 15,000 pieces of art and about 35,000 publications and art books, an incredible resource of art. Vermont is blessed that that collection is mainly, or at least half of it, is our Vermont artists.
It's probably something like that, yeah.
So thank you so much for bringing us here. So how did this obsession or this collection begin, this particular collection? When did it begin?
Well, I think that the inoculation was given to me as a young child. My mom had been a fashion design artist, a commercial artist as a young adult before I met her, before she had me. And so I was exposed to art at a very young age, and we grew up in New York City and went to museums and galleries, and it was just something that was just part of our lives. But I didn't realize how much a part of my life it would be until much later. I always wanted to go look at art exhibitions and the museum on the campus at Cornell University when I was a student there, and I was the only one in my group that wanted to do that always, but I went anyway and just really had a great time.
Because your focus was very different at Cornell.
Oh yeah, my focus was science.
Yeah.
I was an entomology major.
And you graduated when you were 19, because
Yes.
you had been working, at the History Museum in New York since you were 8.
Yep. I'd been at the museum since I was 5 as a volunteer and worked there at the age of 8.5 as a staff person.
So what was the shift for you, because you ended up in insurance and financial planning? So what happened there?
Well, it was a series of calamities that happen to people when they don't plan. And so I came from a traditional family, which means that we didn't plan. My dad died the summer after my freshman year in college, and he didn't believe in insurance. And I got a very rare form of pneumonia as I was graduating from college and almost didn't live. And so in 2 easy incidents, I managed to rack up about $150,000 worth of bills. So I thought this would be something that I could help others to avoid through proper planning and education. And so that was the original impetus to get involved in the financial services industries. And it actually took me away from science for a period of time. But I always kept an interest in cultural and visual art. And I always found a lot of interesting things to be involved with and to look at. And then I went to the South End Art Hop in Burlington in 1998 and just had a really great kind of life-changing experience. And it made me want to create. I didn't realize I was going to be creating this at the time, but I knew that I really wanted to be more involved personally.
So what happened then? How many pieces of art did you buy at that art hop?
I didn't buy very many. At the art hop, I only bought 3 or 4. But before the year was over, I had over 300 pieces. So, that means about 3.5 months, This is a space that is devoted to geometrical abstraction, line quality, and op and neo-op work.
Mm. So what we have, this looks like much earlier work.
This double wall here is op art of the period. And the idea is that all of the other work comes out of that work, either directly or indirectly, conceptually. And so this is the stuff from which all of the other work has sprung. And in a way, these artists gave the artists that are working now permission to do what they're doing.
Wow. And a number of these are Vermont artists.
Or at least with Vermont connections.
With Vermont connections.
Yeah, the majority of the work on both of these walls is by Ernst Bankert, who was part of the group Anonyma, which consisted of Ed Michkowski and Frank Hewitt, as well as himself. It started in 1960. And there's one Frank Hewitt painting and a bunch of Ernst works. And there's a couple of other works that are unrelated to the 2 of them.
And then some of these, this is Vermont artist.
That's Clark Derby's from Burlington. And also this work in the other area that was a window is also Clark Derby's.
Right. And how do you see that emerging from this other work?
It's the geometrical and the attention to lines and the playing with space. They're all visual tropes. It's an attempt to fool the eye and to make you think one thing and look at another, and it's a 2D, 3D dynamic.
And then it seems, I mean, the furniture all works here. Is this you going to flea markets and antique stores and just can't resist, or it will look good there?
It's about putting this up and having this piece here, which was a very good friend of mine's husband made that back in the 40s. It's an early piece that by a fellow who's an industrial designer. He's the guy that invented modular furniture. And I got that here, and I had the op art here, and I thought, mid-century modern. So I've been filling out the space with the correct furnishings based upon what I see would be go-withs with the art.
Okay, fun. You have another room in this space. Not that we can, I mean, you can't even take this in.
It's hard to do, isn't it?
In this short period
People
of
are
time.
always
It's
saying to
just
me,
not
when
right.
did you get that? And isn't that great? And I go, yeah, I've had that for 8 years right there.
Yeah.
And people are always doing it because it's like compressed matter. It's really hard to take it in. Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's fabulous.
Yeah, but there's other spaces we can walk and take a look.
Take a look.
This piece right here is by Carol McDonald. And a lot of people are familiar with her work,
is
but I
surprising.
think a lot of people would be surprised to know that that was Carol McDonald, because it doesn't appear to be a typical Carol McDonald piece.
And this is one of your most recent acquisitions.
Yes, it is. I got it over the weekend. And it just spoke to me, and it's the right period. It's mid-century modern, and it's a British potter. These works are interesting because these were done by Leslie Fry early in her career, and I don't think a lot of people, I think a lot of people in the area are familiar with Leslie Fry, but they wouldn't necessarily be aware that this would be some work that she did. But she went through this period where she was doing three-dimensional biomorphic forms, and I just think these are really wonderful.
Those are terrific. She has a lot of public art.
Right, exactly.
All around town. But
Right.
that is unusual, early stuff. And what this is great. This guy
It's coming out to greet you.
emerges.
It's coming out to greet you. This is Josh Nielsen. In fact, the rest of this wall is all Josh Nielsen. These 6 pieces are his, the ones that are hanging and greeting you. And I just think they're really wonderful. It's a great examination of space.
So I'm seeing a lot of work on the floor as well. Are these pieces you're determining whether they work in here or don't work in here?
No, these are pieces that really belong there, but there's no more wall there. So they want to hang out with their cousins and their brothers and their sisters, but that's the way for them to do it. These are by artists who, by and large, are on the wall also, or they're artwork that's related conceptually or stylistically to other work that are in this room.
And where are you finding most of the art that you buy?
Usually it's in one of 2 places, either from the artists themselves or from a gallery.
And what does your collection reflect about you and your personality?
Colorful.
Indeed. That's great. And tell me a little bit more about your relationship with artists. How does that work? So you see a piece that you really like. Do you then?
There's a correlation between the artwork and the artist. And it's very rare for me to like someone's artwork and not like them. I mean, it has happened, but it's very rare. And also the opposite. So when I see artwork that I really love, generally I'm going to be interested in that person as well. And so we just, by nature, develop a relationship over time. And some artists I'm very good friends with, and some artists I just see casually once in a great while. And some people I meet with, it seems like every week, and have lunch with them or whatever we're doing. But that's the nature of the relationship. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, I think it does, but I'm interested in what do you say talk about? Some artists like to talk about their process, some don't because they're using art instead of words.
Well, it's hard to have a conversation with someone that doesn't use words. I mean, it could be done in pantomime, but I'm not that good at that. I'm a verbal kind of guy, and most of the people I hang out with seem to be okay with expressing themselves through words. I haven't run into too much problem
as
with
well,
that.
even though
Yeah.
they're mainly painters or sculptors. With you, they don't have a problem.
No.
So do you talk a lot about their process?
It depends on what they want to talk about and what I want to talk about. But I mean, we cover a lot of, over time, I'm sure we've covered all kinds of topics.
So are there...
Do you, when you talk with someone who's an engineer, do you talk about their engineering only?
Of course.
Well, it's the same idea. Artists are people, and so they have the same concerns that everyone else does, and they're just a very creative, fun group of people to hang out with.
Where do contemporary Vermont artists fit into the larger scene of contemporary art?
I think what we're doing here is a small microcosm of the world at large. When I go to art fairs all the time, and I go to galleries in major urban areas all the time, and I think our level of mediocrity is much higher than theirs. When I go to New York, I see things that are really amazing, good, and really amazing bad, but it's just a statistical process. There's so many people that if you look at the number of people involved, it's just a standard deviation issue. We just don't, like I think the rate of artists, we have one of the highest levels of per capita incidence of visual artists in our general ambient population, but we still don't have a lot because we don't have a lot of capita. So we say we have a high per capita incidence, but we don't have a lot of capita. There's not enough people in Vermont to start a fire with. So it really is not, there are a lot of artists here considering how many people there are in general, but it's still a relatively small number of people in general.
Would you say they're isolated or more provincial than what you're seeing in New York, or that distinction doesn't really apply?
Well, I think that it isn't, I wouldn't make the distinction in terms of their work product or the way they do their work, but I would make that distinction in terms of their ability to have an economic career based on their own work. I think that you really need to get into an environment that offers more opportunity for monetary reimbursement for your time and energy. So in an area, my standing joke is that if 1% of the people walking down West 23rd Street decide to buy an artwork, it'll be a whole number. And here in Vermont, if 1% of the people walking down Pine Street at any given moment were going to buy a piece of work, it could be 20 years before, or 50 years, or 100 years before that would equal 1. And so we have a lot of art sales considering the size of our population base, but you have to consider that, and it still doesn't translate to a lot of sales. And that's an issue. But, if there's other people out there that want to start collecting, I would encourage them. I think it's a wonderful thing.
So why contemporary? Was that the focus then, or?
Yes. Yeah, it always has been. I've always found it much easier to talk to people before they're dead. And so I liked the idea of working with artists while they were still around to talk about what they were doing.
And so most of these artists. Do you have a relationship? A lot of collectors don't have relationships.
It's true. I don't really understand that. I mean, I know that it's true, but I don't really understand what the attraction would be to not do that, because the artists are certainly at least as interesting, if not much more so, than the work itself.
So you're in the financial services. Is this an investment, all of this art, or is it really?
Well, we'll find out. But I mean, I don't think so. It's not the intent with which I've accumulated it. I've wanted to create environments that I wanted to be in. I wanted to support the local economy, the creative economy, and I wanted to provide real and psychic income to visual artists, which is something that isn't as common in small towns. And so I wanted to be able to give back to the creative portion of the community.
Many art collectors who have a fraction of what you have are very wealthy people. Is this your personal wealth? I mean, hopefully you had this panic about wealth, so you went into insurance. And how are you able to do this?
I really shouldn't be doing this. I'm not wealthy, or at least I would be more wealthy if I hadn't done this, but everyone makes decisions and concessions in life. Life is not a perfect thing. And so this is my calling. And so there are sacrifices that I've had to make, and I've made them.
A lot of people are intimidated by art in general.
I've heard rumors about that, yeah.
and certainly buying original art. Is there something you say to people to help them find the joy that you have had from this? Well,
I think if people experienced original visual art in their everyday lives, there would be a lot less mystique around it. There would be a lot more interest, and people would be able to identify with it more. It isn't important that people buy every work they see that they like, although I do encourage it, but it is important that they have exposure to it. And so part of the purpose of this collection is to allow people to have exposure to what's going on in the art world today, even if they live in Vermont. And by that I mean that a lot of people don't want to or can't travel to New York or to LA or to Miami to see what's happening and what people perceive to be happening, people in the art world. And so I have little pieces of that I bring back here that people can experience.
Well, and that's, of course, what the South End Art Hop is all about. You were president of the board of SEBA, the South End Business Association.
Arts and Business, yes.
Right, which puts on the Art Hop. What's so great about the Art Hop and what it does?
Oh, the Art Hop is a wonderful experience. It's sort of like an Easter egg hunt for art. There are over 100 sites. There are well over 500 artists. Some years we've had over 800 artists participate. We have anywhere from 40 to 50,000 people that come in. We have hundreds of volunteers, and it's really the largest visual art event in the state of Vermont. And it also has a lot of ripple effects economically. I've been told by a couple of statistics classes in UVM that we've asked them to solve this problem, that well over $1 million is created in value for retail, restaurants, different other businesses within the state of Vermont, just as a result of the South End Art Hop. But why it's important is that it's an opportunity for artists once a year to showcase their works in a non-judgmental, non-curated, non-hierarchical environment that anyone can go to, anyone can look at, anyone can buy. And people tell us that they work their vacations around Art Hop because they know that they're going to be able to find something that they love that they can afford. And there's works that are $5 and there's works that are thousands of dollars.
You also work as a curator. I mean, you have your regular job, but with all of this remarkable art, you also do some curation. And you also sometimes curate right from your own collection.
Yes, that's correct. This piece right here is by a fellow named Dave Huber. Do you remember Dave Huber?
The name is familiar.
Dave Huber was one of the great assemblage artists in this area. Of course, I didn't know that before I could spell art. And so I went to the 98 Art Hop, as I mentioned previously, and in the lunule on the first floor of the Maltex building, high up, or what seemed high up, was this incredibly large piece which you see in front of you, which now, in context, is not that large. And it's called Happy Boys. And I just went through all of the things. You know, there's all these different stages of, like, when someone dies that you really care, the denial and the grief. And I went through that. I think most people must go through that when they're thinking about art. You know, like, I can't afford this. It's too big. Where would I put it? What am I going to do with it? So I had all of those questions. And the woman that was coordinating the Art Hop that year, Maya Brandt, said, I set up a studio visit with you with Dave. And I'm like, what does that mean? And why would I want to do that? So anyway, I went there and bought 5 pieces, of which this was one. And this really was the piece.
Of his or of different
his?
artists?
Yes,
Wow.
on the studio visit. And so this is the piece that really started everything. And I consider this an important piece to me because of that.
And what are the other pieces that are here? Clearly, this is not just paintings that you collect. There are collages.
Well, this whole space that we're in has a theme. And the theme is collages, assemblages, constructions, ceramics, and a little bit of glass, and some sculptural work. And so that's the nature of the work that I'm trying to show in this particular space that we're in.
And another space would have, say,
Other
paintings.
things. Other things, yes.
And other themes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do a few of these others relate to this original?
Well, this piece and this piece are both by Dave Huber also, and they're also collages or assemblages. This piece is, my framer, Jen Koch, did this. You know, frames for you and Mona Lisa too. And so this is a piece that she did, and I just felt that there were some lines and some depth that kind of worked along with these other 2 pieces. But these works don't necessarily relate to the other, any of the works on here don't necessarily relate to the other works in terms of who did them or why they were done or the underlying concept, but there may be some formal concerns that are mirrored in the works. In other words, the way that they are constructed or the way that they present their line. There may be some reasons that they sort of relate to each other geometrically or in space.
So, Mark, what are you looking for? What gets you to go, I have to have that in my collection?
I really don't know, but when I see it, I feel it and I know. Pieces that I like say, they have this kind of a dialogue with me. They say, take me home. And they speak to me. And when I try to walk by them, they say, wait, before you go, buy me. Then there's other pieces that I like, but they don't do that. They just go, hey there, how are you? And then I don't pay attention to them.
Has that changed over the years?
Is the nature of the work different than I'm collecting now? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
I would like to think that my eye is getting better, but that's for other people to determine. One of my long-term goals is to see if the collective creative consciousness ends up determining that some of my selections were of interest and of note. And that probably won't happen until after I'm gone, so I probably won't see it personally, although you never know, things are moving fast these days.
Well, interesting legacy. So what do we have here?
Well, this wall from the end all the way to this section here are early collages of Michael Oatman, who was a fixture in the Burlington art scene back in the 80s and the 90s. And these works are illustrative of how complex his works are individually and collectively. I mean, if I just gave you a laundry list of the ingredients, it's like no other artist that I've ever had. So there's carbon paper, there's erasure, there's clay grounds, there's collage elements, some of which were actually created by the artist. There's whiteout, and of course there's all the normal things like pen and ink and ballpoint pen and acrylic and oil, and there's a whole variety of different things, graphite. So, and he even has his own paint by number things that he's created. So, I mean, they're really very complex and wonderful works. And it was our loss when he left Vermont to go to Troy, New York. It's great for them, but not so much for us. And then these works in front are the creations of John Brickles.
Still
who is
right here?
Right, this is the more current generation of people in Burlington right now. And these are all hybrid vehicles that started out with metal old pedal cars that were either rusted out or just not in particularly good shape, and then a variety of parts have been replaced by his handmade clay, and they're really wonderful. There's something about them that really resonates.
So clearly it's not just paintings or assemblages. You also have a lot of ceramics. Should we take a look at that?
Sure. This is again a small selection of the works that are both glass and ceramic here at the Waskomium, and the more functional pieces are in this top layer here, and then these are more sculptural and extraordinary in terms of their forms, and then these are a variety of historical and classic face jugs, as well as some modern interpretations of the Southern tradition of face jugs. And then these pieces below are figural in one way or another.
And let's talk about the Waskomium for just a second.
Absolutely.
Wasn't that Michael Oatman who came up with that term for you?
Absolutely true.
So that's the name of your collection.
Yeah, Michael Oatman was in a show that traveled through the SUNY University network. And to quote him, he was the token not famous person in the show at that time. And they didn't ask about what collections you were in. They asked about what public collections you were in. And it was at the time, there was only one public collection that he was in. So he said, I got to come up with at least two. You have a quasi-public collection. Well, let's give it a name. What do you think? So the Waskomium. So the best part of it is it's not a narcissistic thing, because I didn't create it. We did argue about the spelling. But and now there's probably 30 or 40 catalogs that have images in it of work that I've loaned out that says courtesy of the Waskomium, Burlington, Vermont. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. This is the Michael Smith wall. This is an individual who, just as one person, has such a wide variety of media. It's really quite mind-boggling. Everything from white pen and white out to straight acrylic painting. This piece, which is called Barns and Bridges, actually includes painted plaster molds of dentures.
Well, a lot of it, there's a lot of three-dimensionality in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, very creative and wonderful work.
Wild. Great. Let's go upstairs.
Okay.
Don't look at the camera.
Okay. Oh, look at all these bugs. This has a background.
This is part of the invertebrate images subsection of artwork. Because of my background, I have a real interest in invertebrate zoology, and so I gave my specimen collection to UVM years ago, but I still am involved vicariously by collecting bug art.
Right. So you used to collect real bugs.
Oh, yes.
Early collection.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's art. Great. And Catherine Hall.
Catherine Hall, yes, another local luminary Burlington artist.
How do you keep track of all this? I mean, when you've taken me around, you know every artist's name, you know where you got these pieces, so you have an amazing mind, but how do you keep track of 15,000 pieces?
Well, it does help to have a decent memory, and so I'm very fortunate to have that, but there's an inventory that details each piece and all of the pertinent information about it.
And what do you hope to do with this in the future?
The inventory or the collection?
The collection.
Oh, when I grow up, I'm going to become a museum. My goal for the collection is for it to be another good reason for people to come to Vermont, to be another opportunity for Vermont artists to show their work in a proper space. By that, I mean designed for the display of artwork. And I'm not knocking alternative spaces. I've seen great shows in coffee houses and restaurants and libraries and bookstores, but this is primarily an art space. And if this were to mutate into a 35,000 square foot building, this would be what I'm talking about.
Right now the collection is in what, about six locations?
8 locations, yeah.
8 locations.
Yeah.
Mark Waskow, thank you so much.
Sure. My pleasure.